Welcome to More Than Miles, the podcast where we use storytelling and expert interviews to widen the lens on what it means to be a happy and healthy endurance athlete. We believe that athletes are so much more than their body, sport, and training miles. I'm Dr. Kate Mihevik-Edwards.
And I'm Dr. Kacy Sinders. We are endurance athletes, physical therapists, and huge coffee addicts. We spend most of our time treating, educating, and working with endurance athletes. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Now let's get to the show.
Welcome, everybody, to More Than Miles. On today's show, we get to speak with the authors of the new book, How She Did It, Molly Huddle and Sara Slattery. Molly is a professional runner and a new mom. In fact, she just gave birth last week, so we can't believe she was even on the show. She has won more than 25 national titles, held 6 American records, completed 2 Olympic finals, and placed 3rd in the New York City Marathon. Sara is also an accomplished runner, winning 4 NCAA titles and qualifying for 4 Olympic trials. She is currently the head coach of both the men's and women's cross-country teams in Grand Canyon University in Phoenix, and she's mom of 2.
Molly and Sara really gave us a little window into their process as they were creating the How She Did It book, which both Kate and I are loving right now. We have a copy of it in the clinic. It's a great resource for women in all stages of life, but we really focus a lot on young girls and the messages that we want them to get to have a healthy and long-term approach to training and really bringing the joy of running across the spectrum in all stages of life. So you guys are really going to love this one. I think we could have talked for hours. We almost did, I think, but please enjoy this podcast with Molly Huddle and Sara Slattery.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having us. We're really excited about it. And with both of your backgrounds, we're excited to have our book featured on here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome. I couldn't wait to get my hands on the book. We had first heard about it from Amy Begley, and she told us before it was coming out, and we were talking about it. She was in the book. And when we finally got it, both Kacy and I were like, yes, this is amazing. So I'm just glad you guys put this out into the world. It's going to be really such a great resource for women of all ages, really.
Yeah, and Kate doesn't know this yet, but I ordered a second copy for the clinic. So it's actually in the clinic right now because it's a perfect thing. You can just pick up and read a few stories and get some inspiration. So I thought it would be really great to have out in our waiting room.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's a bunch of PT performance and injury prevention things they can look at too and talk to you about.
Yes, exactly.
That's right. Actually, it was so funny. My favorite part, I loved your expert section. And I know that's a part that probably you even said in the book, if you decide to skip over this chapter and rush ahead to the profiles, come back eventually. I think that's what you said. I love that part because I feel like that's what nobody listens to and everybody needs to hear.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the people are so well qualified that we talked to. We really we've picked up a lot as athletes, but we wanted it to come right from the source of who we would go to for help in these important areas. So very valuable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And like you said, people want to go rush forward to the profiles or things like that. But we felt like it was really important that those are kind of the recipes for success. And also getting those reinforced in the stories, a lot of the messages and the different things in there really help sell what is being told in the front. So that was something that Molly and I always joke about. We would get told what to do all the time, but unless we saw it play out successfully in other people, we weren't going to listen to it. So we're trying to drive those messages in those stories.
One of my questions was actually, what is the resistance for athletes to take in this type of information? That was literally one of the things I wanted to ask you, because that's something we have such a hard time with as experts. What do we need to do for people to listen to us?
Well, basically just what Sara said. When it was us, we really wanted to be good. It's not like we didn't want to put in the time for those little things. It was just, it's hard to see it working on yourself. It happens slowly. And if you can look over and see someone who's doing what you want to do, if I looked over and saw, Shalane, who's 3 years older than me, winning a medal and then also doing these exercises after her race or before her race, I'd be like, okay, I'll go do that. You know what I mean? I just think it helped to see it a little bit advanced, like, okay, it's working for her down the road. I just got to get there and do those things. So that's why we liked trying to put it in story form as well. Ask them those questions in the interviews. And I know for us, it helped, or for me anyway, it helped seeing the women I train with, like, dot their I's and cross their T's with little things like diet, rehab, recovery. So I could see exactly what they did and what I was missing out on.
Yeah. And I see with my athletes too, like the biggest way to get them motivated to do something is telling a story of another person that has gone through that and dealt with that in the past. And then they're not as resistant to try it, and they know that it'll work. So I try to use those stories all the time. And I think, like, my husband's even in sales, like he does medical sales, but he's like, the best way to get someone to buy is like telling a story. Like stories are the only, like, the way people can understand things and see themselves in that person's shoes. So
yeah. And not everyone's the same. Like for me, I'm like, no, I just need a journal, a scientific journal telling me it works. But like most people, it's like, you also need that human like story of like, well, see yourself in this, like this could be you. So yeah, definitely the story is the way we communicate best with people.
Well, and you did such a great job in this book, pulling all the pieces and weaving it throughout the book and throughout the stories and the interviews, all the 80 interviews that you did. I found myself laughing and crying and yelling at the book, depending on where I was.
Molly and Sarah, if you guys don't know, Kate is also an author, and she has written a few books based on her experiences. But the one that parallels, I think, most how she did it is her book on running during pregnancy and postpartum. And a big parallel I see is you guys both wrote the book that you wish your younger self had, right? And writing it to this audience of like, I wish I would have known these things. So I don't really have a question. I'm just like really appreciative of people like you guys who are writing things like this for your younger self, because I think that that's the most powerful thing and powerful gift that you can give to others. So thank you guys.
What's the name of the book, Kate? Because I want to promote this.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it, Molly. And actually, I can't, like I said before the interview, I said, I can't believe you're on here so soon after having a baby. I actually have it right here. It's Go Ahead, Stop and Pee, Running During Pregnancy and Postpartum.
I love the new title.
There's definitely like a need for like condensed information on training through pregnancy and postpartum. Like so many women have messaged me on Instagram about advice, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm not an expert by any means, but like, I agree. We want more resources for this. Like, this is something more and more women who were told just not to work out during pregnancy. It's like, that's not a thing anymore. So now we want to know, what should we be doing? Like, what are the studies? It's just such a guessing game until you talk to basically your friends. So yeah, definitely need more books, more classes, all that stuff.
I'll send you one afterwards I'll send you one. But I agree. I liked how you have been really showing the world, I guess, on Instagram, what you've been doing to get through pregnancy and how you're exercising and really using your body and just being really open about it. And I think, like you both said, stories matter. And that tells a story of somebody who likes to move, knows how to use their body, and they did fine and really were able to do what they wanted to do during pregnancy. So that was really cool to watch.
Yeah. And even still, I was kind of just making it up, going by feel, getting some advice, but like not enough that I would tell someone to do what I did per se. But, if anything, there's definitely a need for people to hear what they should be doing from experts. And I'm glad there's more of that coming out. So we'll hand the book out if you want us to.
Well, thank you. No, I'd love to. It's great. We just, it's just a couple of years old and it's all research based. So we put it together because I was a mom who was a runner and my co-author was a mom who was a runner. We were in the medical profession and we didn't know what to do. And since we didn't know what to do, we knew that nobody knew what to do. Yep. If you're in the medical profession and don't know, you're in trouble. So we just collected research and talked to everybody and put together a whole thing. So yeah, I'll send you one.
Awesome.
But let's get back to your book because that's why we're here. So thank you for bringing that up. Every time we do a podcast, I get kind of nervous to talk to everybody and just people I haven't met. And I get really excited to think about just what the conversation will look like. When you were putting your book together and doing the interviews, was there anybody that you were really excited to talk to or nervous to talk to that you got a chance to connect with?
I think there was several women. Like, I think the best part of writing this book was doing all the interviews and getting to hear all the stories. There's so many inspiring women even that we competed against that we didn't really know what was going on. Like, I think we've said this a few times, but during my era, when I was like competing professionally and Molly was a few years behind me, there wasn't social media. There wasn't a lot of information. The internet was like, in high school, they were just like, we had the Harrier magazine. We were just getting like websites with like DieStat and different things like that, where you'd get more information on what kids were doing around the country. But you didn't know, like outside of meets, you'd talk to people, but you didn't really get to hear like what it took to get to where they were, what they were dealing with day to day. And so there's a lot of mystery and like in that. And so you would, I would see these professional athletes as these like machines, and I didn't really understand the human side of them and how they got, like, were they like a normal high school girl like I was, getting to, like, did they go through those same steps, or like were they always just these phenoms that like didn't have bad days and just were like cranking it all the time? So it was a mystery, like, and so to hear the human side of all these girls was amazing, and the things that they faced. And I think the biggest ones for me, like, I always really looked up to Lynn Jennings, and she doesn't do a lot of interviews. So it was really cool to hear, or there isn't a lot of information on that. In college, I did a report. I did one of my history reports on Joan Benoit. So it was really cool to like actually get to, and I've met her at her road race before, but she's just such an amazing woman and so humble. And she just works really, really hard, and still to this day has that same mentality. So those were two that were really exciting for me. And then also someone like Paula Radcliffe, who has run these, I remember she was running these amazing times when I was in college, and it just seemed like unreachable, and still like her record stands today. But she's also a mom and never won a medal and struggled with a lot of things. So to hear her side, like the things that she faced as she was going throughout her career, it was really getting to hear that human side is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And ditto on Lynn Jennings. I think if you're our era, she's who you had on your wall as a poster. She's someone whose career I always like really respected. And so she was really cool to talk to. That interview was fun for me. And also Joetta Clark too, because I felt like I was trying to make an Olympic team at the same age she made her last team at when I was talking to her, and she had her first daughter, the same age I did. Like we had similar trajectories as far as age. And so I was like, okay, if she can do it, I can do it. Like, what advice do you have for me? Basically. So yeah. She was awesome to talk to, just for me, the phase of life I was in. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I bet it was really cool. And you get to ask the questions that you want to ask of all of these incredible women.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it like for you, the journey from idea that you had on the run while you were running together? So you had this idea to write this book, and then all the way to the end where you finally published it, and now you're promoting it and marketing. What's that journey been like for you guys?
It was longer than I thought.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I felt like COVID did let us kind of get access to people that maybe we wouldn't have if they were busy and traveling and racing, because we did a bulk of our interviews during the first like lockdown for COVID. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's an amazing amount of like editing and information collecting and checking, and especially the kind of book we put together. You know, we didn't really sit down and write like a fiction book. We just collected a lot of stats, a lot of stories, a lot of information. So it was a lot of work, but I feel like we did a good job doling it out and tackling it as a team.
Yeah, it was like the biggest research paper ever.
Exactly. I know. It was like college research, our final project in college or something.
But it was awesome having Molly. Like, I can imagine doing this on my own, being able to bounce ideas off each other and work together. It was so helpful and rewarding. Like, I don't know how you did it on your own, writing your own book, because like writing, like co-authoring made it so much better. And there was times where Molly was really busy with racing and I'd take over, or I was in the middle of my season with coaching. And so she would tackle on things that I couldn't. So it was really nice to have a teammate during this time.
Oh God, I'm sure. I know the back and forth because one of the book we were talking about before that I wrote, I had a co-author, and it was a much better experience because there were things that I was good at and there were things that I was awful at. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's your experience at all or not.
We're very task oriented. And I think that's part of like the running mentality that's helped, like just like taking it one chunk, like little chunks at a time. But yeah, definitely Molly had different strengths than I did. And so that really helped us.
Yeah, I really liked anything writing related. I felt like we were both good at seeing things through. I feel like we probably annoyed the publisher a little bit to be like, this thing you mentioned a few weeks ago. And like, we were just like really checking off every little thing, but we're just used to that, I guess. Yeah, it's the mentality that took us through our pro careers, and it helps you write books. So yeah, transferable skills.
Yes, it does. Are you sick of reading the book? I know this is a funny question to ask. Every book I wrote, I thought, I don't really want to read this again because I read it so many times with editing and all the work behind it. Are you in that space too, or are you able to reread it?
I've been able to now. Like when it first came out, I had a hard time. And then we did the audio version, which was cool. So I listened to the whole book, which was different than like looking at it.
Yeah.
I think looking at it at first, we both freaked out because we saw things that we were nervous about or like wasn't exactly how we imagined it. But now looking back at it, I'm really proud of it. And like, you just have to like step away a little bit. At first it took a month. I didn't want to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I still, when I read it, I'm like, ooh, I wish I could change that. But I literally would say that, like, I would always want to keep changing it. So at some point it's your book. And I just think the message and the intention we had with it worked. It's clear. It's what we wanted it to be as far as that. And so I'm proud of that. I'm like, this really is aimed at the serious young runner. It really does get the basics down for the female athlete at a critical age. You want them to carry those lessons through. So when I look at it, I'm like, I do get that from the book. Like I'm proud of that message. But yeah, sometimes I glaze over when I try to read it again. I'm like, oh, I've read this page too many times.
Yeah, that has to be my favorite part of the book is telling the stories, and that like not everyone's journey is the same, because it is so easy to get sucked into the comparison trap and things like that, especially as a young runner. And so I do think that message is super duper clear. I am curious to hear about both of your beginnings in running and what was high school Molly and high school Sara like in terms of approaching running, and what was kind of your biggest struggles along that journey that you were asking about in your guests and the people you were interviewing for the book.
When I was in high school, there wasn't nearly as much information out there online as far as how to train, what pitfalls maybe there are with young athletes, low energy availability, overtraining, things. I didn't even know what the rankings really were. Like I didn't go online and look at rankings or anything like that. It was early days for that when I was in high school in like the early 2000s. In a way, it was cool because I just did other sports. I ran when I ran. If I posted a time that was good in my city, I was like, cool. I'm like did a good time. Like I wasn't beating myself up because someone in California ran 10 seconds faster than me. I just didn't even know that. So I think that was something that helped me. And then I got really serious about running when I did realize, I could get a college scholarship for this. My coach went online and looked at rankings my junior year. I posted a fast time and he was like, you actually are third in the country right now. Like we should buckle down and like see what you can do off of real training. And so I think that kind of started me into like trying to find more information. I always wanted to know more about what the women were doing who were better than me once I realized like I had potential and, there's always something I can do better. But I definitely think like some of the things that we are talking about in the expert section of the book, I would have loved to hear. I definitely think I had low energy availability when I was in high school. It wasn't like an official eating disorder or anything like that. Just didn't know how to fuel well, was doing a lot of sports. And luckily I corrected that before my bone density became a problem. But so many girls, you see them with stress fracture after stress fracture in college, and that actually started in high school. So we really need to get the messaging out earlier than the training rooms in college. it's probably a little bit late for them to hear it then. So, that's that's something I went through. That's something a lot of girls go through, a lot of male athletes even. As a young athlete, you always kind of have to like sort out the like keeping racing fun and kind of like managing your expectations and comparison and anxiety and stuff. And so I'm glad we talk about that, because I don't think I had a ton of that in high school, but I definitely see that a lot in that age demographic, especially now that we know so much and can compare all the time. So there were some pluses and minuses from competing back in the days when I did, but I always thought I had a good balance. I always felt like the sport was something that was a net positive for me. Like I loved it, and I never had anything that pushed me away from it early. And so that's kind of what we want to see fostered in every athlete that comes at it at that age.
And Did you grow up in upstate New York?
Yep, upstate New York.
Where?
Elmira.
I'm from Little Falls, so it's not that far from Elmira, actually.
Nice. What section is that for?
It's like 29A, so it's not that far. But anyway, when I read that, I was like, oh, that's funny. I didn't realize she was from upstate as well.
Yeah, yep. Yeah. New York's a pretty good track state. We always had really good competition once you got to the state level. So I think that was cool. I got to see who some of the best girls were in the country at the end of the year.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a pretty great place. And then what about you, Sarah?
Yeah, I grew up in Arizona, and I actually started out as a swimmer. Well, I played a lot of sports. I played soccer, a bunch of sports, but I got really serious with swimming, and I swam club for 8 years. Didn't really start running seriously. I did middle school track and cross country, but I was a swimmer and was just doing it because a bunch of my friends were doing it, and I had some success. And then in high school, my freshman year, I swam the fall, and I did not run cross country. And then I decided to run track that spring, and was second in state in the 8 mile and 2 mile and our 4x8 one state. And so then my dad was like, well, you maybe should put some more time into this, because you're better at this than you're like. I was making junior nationals for swimming, and I think my best finish in state was like 6th or 8th in swimming. And then my first year was second in running. And so that summer I did club track, and then I decided to run cross country in the fall. Swimming was much different. I feel like it's a really good sport in terms of like goal setting and learning how to train hard, and it doesn't impact your bones and muscles the same. Like I never had low energy availability during that time, because we ate a ton, because you were trying to fuel. Like I was always hungry when I was running or swimming. But then when I made that transition to running, one of my first meets, like I got really sick afterwards trying to eat the same way. And so then I think that carried over to me not feeling as well going into some of my running stuff. So I did lose my period at the end of my junior year, when I started increasing my mileage a little bit more. During that time, there wasn't a lot of information, and the answer to that problem was putting girls on birth control. And so then I was on birth control my junior year in high school until my senior year of college. And I had a doctor tell me, like, we should really address the issue of why you're not getting your period and not be on birth control for this long. So I was really grateful that we did that. That was a weird thing for me too, because I grew up Catholic, and like my parents, they're telling me to put myself on birth control. I wasn't having sex at the time, and I was like, this is weird, like to be going on birth control, but okay. And I think now, like hormonally, that's not like a great answer as well. A lot of girls have trouble with blood clot issues or weight issues or hormonal issues. So trying to address the real problem to go back, I wish I could have addressed that issue instead of taking a medication instead. So that was one thing that I faced during that time, but I was really, really lucky. I had a great high school coach I had a woman, and her name was Sabrina Robinson, and she ran in college and ran post-collegiately and ran like 2:32 in the marathon, and she ran for Adidas for a long time. And she opened my eyes to the sport, but really progressed me in like a healthy way and made me really, like, we had fun the whole time we were running, and I really enjoyed it. And I really looked up to her, and I still do as like she had 2 young kids, like coached and taught, and she was just she is an amazing woman. I was really grateful to have her. Like she came in my sophomore year, right when I started running, and she was just a great mentor. Yeah. And then I ended up going on to University of Colorado. But I think I was really lucky to have like be in those situations, but I like going back and looking like Molly and I, like there were so many girls that didn't have those experiences and didn't have the people guiding them in the right way. And so like, that's where we felt like there's so many stories of women that were getting out of the sport early and not like seeing things through. And we really wanted to help foster better relationships with running for girls and help give them the information that they need to like have longer, more successful careers and know the steps that the right things to do.
So we were talking a little bit about how kind of your journeys and why you guys wrote the book, really, and with young girls really needing to have the information about what happens when you don't get your period, what should you do, that type of thing. Just using that through the lens of your own story. One of the things that I find often is people think, or women often think, oh, I didn't get my period. Great. Now I'm a real runner. And
I felt that way.
Did you?
Mm-hmm.
I think like even some of the coaches felt that way. It really bothered me. Like I went through puberty at like 12 or 13, and I was coming from a swimming background, going into a running background. And I honestly think that was really helpful for me, like to have like a longer career, not have that interrupted. But I remember hearing this when I first started running that, oh, that girl went through her period, like she's not going to be the same, or she, like she's developed now, so she won't be the same runner. And I was like, what the heck? What does that mean? Like, I've already gone through this. Does that mean I'm not going to be as good as I could be? Or I even talked to my coach about that once, and she was like, Sarah, you're strong, you're healthy, like you're running good times. Like, why would you listen? Like, why would you listen to that? But it's hard, like, not to hear those things when you're in that age. It's like a formidable time in your life, and like not to think that that's true. And you see some of these girls struggle with that, but like there are, like, you're adjusting to a lot of things, like hormonally, your body's changing, and like there is like a little dip, but once you get through that dip, like you're so much stronger and able to handle training so much better. So like that message really needs to be changed for a lot of coaches so that they understand those things. And I wish I could go back and like shake those coaches and like shake them and say, hey, you're wrong. Like, that's not the right message. Yeah. Like these girls, like they could be so much better if you could just help them through this time and then continue like on the right path.
Well, and so many of the top girls, like statistically, like so many of them didn't have their periods or were too thin, like the top high school girls, that I see why they think that, the numbers were just there. And so I feel like it's going to take time to kind of get healthy girls running well. And then you'll see, oh no, that's who is at the top of the sport. Like you don't need to have like this deficiency that they thought was somehow just part of being good. It's not. It's a sign that you're heading for injury or burnout or illness because you're not fueling enough. So it's definitely not the only problem, but I do think it's the biggest, hardest one to tackle. Yeah, the one that you see most often, and for so many different reasons, but it's still the same problem. And we hope it gets to the point where everyone just knows, like, oh no, that's not a shortcut. Like that's actually just something you need to address right away.
Yeah.
I even remember like going to Foot Locker for the first time and I was roomed.
You look at everybody who's the top 10 and you would think you need to be like,
I was 5'8" and like 120 to 25 pounds at the time. And I felt like I was big compared to most of the girls, and that's not big, So, and I remember saying that to my coach after. I was like, I came from a swimming background and I was small, and now I feel like I'm huge compared to the girls on the line. And that's when she was like telling me, like, don't focus on those things. Like, you focus on being stronger and faster, and look at the top women in the sport. Like they're not twigs, like when you look at them. And so that was really nice having a women coach, but like there's a lot of girls that probably didn't get that advice. And I think the messaging is changing. And even Molly and I were at Foot Locker this year. I felt like it didn't look the same way as when I was there. Like the girls do look a lot healthier, and just spending time with them have really good attitudes about the sport in general.
That's nice to hear that at least there's a change on the horizon, because even the fact that we're discussing that there's a performance plateau and that women are losing their periods or not getting them, this is something that we probably wouldn't have even been talking about, 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's huge.
Yeah. Well, I never would have talked to my college coach What more about my period? I can't imagine walking into his office and having a conversation about that. But I know that he, like, I still talk to him a lot, and like his partner, Heather, like she's the assistant coach. And I know they do talk about those things, and that they do like focus on making sure that the girls are healthier and are on the right track with those things. So that's where I feel like having that female role, like, or having someone the girls can talk to, if it's an athletic trainer or assistant coach or the head coach being a woman, like they need a female role there sometimes to feel comfortable to have those conversations.
You guys hit it really on the head, that it's far too normal for people to be having success while not being healthy. And it catches up to everyone at some point. For me, I had a little bit different experience. I definitely dealt with low energy availability from an eating disorder perspective. And while I am a runner, it was like, this is a completely different category of issue. But what I really do wish is that someone would have, grabbed me by the shoulders and shook me and said, I know you don't want to have to deal with this week of feeling bad every month, but you need to do something about this because it's going to impact your long-term health. And I feel very lucky to have dealt with a lot of those health issues and to feel really healthy now. I don't know, what the years in the future will bring, because there are some long-term effects to treating your body in that way for so long. But I really do hope that this isn't as much of an issue for girls in the future, because I always tell my younger athletes, my younger patients, like, the best is yet to come. I know you feel like you need to run as fast as you possibly can in these 4 years, but like, there is so much beyond high school. And, getting high school runners to see that, like myself, like I'd be like, yeah, whatever. But you just have to tell them over and over and over again that the best is yet to come.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about distance running as a sport, too. It is kind of a slow boil. You build up over time, and your best years could be, I mean, not everyone's going to be a professional runner, but like, the reality is it takes a couple years to really reach your peak. Whether you're going from age 16 to age 20, you're going to get so much better. Or you're in it for the long haul, you might be PRing at age 34. We don't know, So it's like, you got to treat your body good for the long haul, because it's a sport where you can really enjoy like really rewarding performances and breakthroughs for a long time if you do it right. And so it's unlike a lot of other sports that way, that patience that you have to have, but it's also kind of cool to like, you can just be building if you do it right.
I mean, some of the best runners right now are 36 to 38 years old. It's incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It is incredible. So tell us, like, what is your best so far memory around running and racing? What's the thing that you've loved most about it? Or is there a favorite race or anything like that? It doesn't have to be one that went really well. And just what's the best for you?
I've had a couple. Yeah. Sorry, Sarah.
No, go ahead.
Go right in. I think my first ever professional team that I made was the World Cross Country team, my first year out of college. So World Cross Country became something I tried to do every year for the first couple years. And I remember the first year, Team USA was fourth. And I was like, I'd love to come back and get a team medal at a world championship, because getting an individual medal felt impossible and far away. But I was like, I think we could get a team medal. And the next year we were third. And so that was really cool. That was just like, I made a Team USA. I know there's Olympics and things that are harder to make, but like, this reminded me of like in college when we made the podium, and it just was like really cool. That, and then just conquering any big thing where you're like, I did, like my first marathon. I was just like, what a journey that was. Like, it was a fun race. It was New York. It went well, but also I was just like, I'm glad I finished. Like, I'm glad I was able to do it. Like, I didn't know if I didn't go well, I'd be like, I don't know if I can run the marathon, and I think maybe this just isn't for me. But it was just such a feeling of accomplishment at something that almost felt like I tried a new sport. And so it was anytime I felt like I like took a step up. So like made a first team, got that like medal, checked off a new event. To me, those were the best.
I think overcoming injuries for me was like a big thing, and like coming back from those, I always had really good success right after them, but like it was a very difficult time. Like I dealt with a lot of injuries throughout college, and I had a couple post-collegiately, but I think learning during that time, learning about my body, learning to listen to things, and then also like seeing it through and coming out the other side, I had a huge appreciation for what I was doing and learned a lot in the process about myself and about my body. And so I almost quit the sport, almost got out like my senior year, just because I'd had 5 stress fractures in a row, and I'd had a major surgery. My husband like talked me back into like, our team ended up winning nationals. I didn't have my best finish, but like I off of like a month of training, I was able to be All-American, and then our team won nationals. And so I was like, oh, that was really worth it. And having like a phenomenal year and won another title. And like, I was at a point earlier in that year where I didn't think I could make it. So like just seeing something through like that, and it always doesn't always end up like a beautiful story at the end, but I just learned so much in that process, and the relationships with those people, and some of the people were even in our book that helped along the way. Like, you really cherish that time. Those are like the most important times, like pivotal points in your life. Those things that I learned during that time have really helped me in like non-running times in my life, where I like believe that I can handle something and see it through, and it will work out on the other side if I just put the effort and the time and see something through. So I think that is something that running has taught me that I feel like is so useful for life. And the other thing that I think is huge is like the relationships with the athletes, like the people, like my friends, like most of my best friends were my college teammates. I've made so many amazing friendships through competing and racing. And then also like a lot of the coaches and therapists and different people and the team that you put together. Those are the best relationships I've had throughout my life. So I think that's been the most rewarding thing with running by far, is those relationships. And now as a coach too, like even with these athletes that I work with and the staff that I work with. So I think the relationship part is like my most favorite part of running, and the places that you get to go.
My physical therapist brain is like churning right now. I need to know about this conversation that you had with your husband that got you back to try running again, because a lot of the patients I see, myself, like we all think about like this process, this injury process is just so exhausting and overwhelming. Like it would be so much easier to walk away, even though, you know, we really, really love the sport. So I want to hear about that conversation and what kind of flipped your mindset there.
What's crazy is he didn't really have any injuries and he talked me out of it. So he just saw like how talented and like how much effort and work that I was putting into it. And he was like, you've been here 4 years, like you've put so much into this, like you're at a point where what do you have to lose if you go one more year? Like you have nothing to lose, like, and you have a lot to gain. And so he just flipping that and stepping back and just like, really, what do I have to lose? Like, what am I going to do with my time if I'm not doing this right now? Do I have something that's more like valuable or rewarding? Like, and I think that's an important thing. Like I talk to my athletes, like I have kids that come to me, like I had a lot of kids during COVID really, really struggle. So it's like, okay, let's look at this big picture. Like, are there things that are more rewarding in your life that you would rather be doing at this point? And so then I was like, no, there's not. This is what I really want to do. I was going to finish my grad degree. Like I really had these goals that I wanted to go for. Like if I don't accomplish them, what's the worst that happens? I don't accomplish it, I guess. But if I really put my mind to it, some really cool things could happen. So are those worth it for me to try? So I was an econ major, so I had to look at the cost benefit of what I was doing in every situation.
Oh, that's funny. That's great advice for your children as well as your athletes. I have a couple questions that I want to direct to Molly specifically in a second, but I do want to ask Sara one more since we're on a roll.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a little bit about coaching. And so you've been coaching for the last 7 years. And when we hopped on the call, you said, this will be your last year doing it, trying to figure out, what is that balance between being a mom and being a coach and being a runner. And so tell us a little bit about that, because you've been in an interesting situation. You're the first female coach that's coached both men and women's teams in the NCAA. And that's pretty incredible. Tell us a little bit about coaching and what that's been like.
I don't know if I'm the first. I think there are some, I don't know. I think there are some other.
The only one right now, I thought. No, but you know what? You're probably right. If you don't think you're the first, then you're not the first, I'm sure.
I think I'm one of the few. I grew up in Phoenix. And so we moved back here to like raise our family. Like we were living in Colorado, running professionally. My husband was transitioning, retiring from running, and we wanted to start our family. And so he's from New Jersey. I didn't want to live in New Jersey. And I convinced him to move to Arizona. So we had my son, and then I still trained and like qualified for the Olympic trials and the marathon for 2016. And then this was 2013 or 14. Then I qualified, got pregnant with my daughter. And then 4 months after having my daughter, I got offered the position at GCU to take over the program. And they were in the transition from D2 to D1. That first year, I was planning on training for the Olympic trials and the marathon and the track. And so I was hesitant to take the position at first, but I was excited about it to start a program in my hometown. And it's really hard to get your foot in the door sometimes with coaching. So I took it. My first year, my PRs were better than the men on the team. So we had quite a ways to go. And I actually trained with them. They got a lot better than I did, but it helped me. I ended up running like within 10 seconds of my PR in the 10K that season. My daughter was really young, but our head coach was really flexible with me. And so I did everything from home outside of practice. So all our recruiting and paperwork. I thought it would get easier as my kids got older. Our team's grown quite a bit. It's been really fun. They're very competitive now. Like we're going to have several kids at regionals this year and possibly some distance kid or two at nationals. And it took a while to get there and like build that process, but that was very rewarding. And it was a lot harder than I thought. But having both teams, like I have 30 athletes, and a couple of times, like during COVID, I had almost 40 on my roster for like 20 and 20. It's hard. It's like I have 40 other children. It's hard not to take on those emotions and be there for the athletes, because I feel like you're their coach, you're their parent during that time, because they're transitioning from like leaving their family for the first time. And you're also during a very big transitional time in their life. So emotionally, there's a lot going on, and you're trying to manage that with the team and get them to perform their best. And so we traveled quite a bit. Like I think I was telling you the last 10 weeks, I've been at a meet every weekend, and it's hard coming home because my kids are getting bigger and they're involved in a lot of activities. And my husband has a demanding job as well. And so like emotionally, like I feel exhausted when I come home from those things, but like I can't be emotionally exhausted because I need to, like, I want to be there for my family as well. And so I think just finding that balance was really, really difficult the last couple of years, because my kids are getting older and more involved in activities and their own things, that it's really hard for me to watch and not be there and miss out on those things. And so I really didn't want to get out of coaching. I really love coaching, but like I mentally could not do another year with missing the amount of things. Like I think I missed more this year than my parents ever did the 10 years of my life in sport, So I don't want to miss those games and activities, and big or small. And so I think I just need to take a break, and I couldn't give my team the time that they needed. I wasn't giving enough time to my family or my team that they needed. And so it wasn't good for either. So I had to figure out what was best. I'm sad to leave the team, but I think there's some really good candidates that they're looking at, and I can take on another role with them in terms of like them trusting that person that comes in, but like I can be more of a friend or mentor to them, or run with them, or especially with the women on my team, just be in a mentor role instead of a coaching role.
Yeah. All these transitions are really difficult, and especially trying to struggle with being a mom and working. And I struggle with some of the same things with my clinic. And then, if I'm going to speak or do whatever, leaving my son behind and missing something for him. So I completely understand. So for you, Molly, you're on the beginning part of this journey and very, very, very beginning, considering you just had Josephine last week.
Yep. Yeah. How did we not talk about her? How did we make it this far?
Had gotten this far without talking about her.
Yes, it was a momentous time. It was a big week for sure.
How are you feeling, as much as you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of still like getting my feet back on the ground and wrapping my head around everything. I feel really well supported. Like I feel like all my friends and family are like, oh, we'll help you. We'll come. So I haven't thought beyond the next like 2 to 3 weeks, when it'll probably just be more normal, like me alone, or just me and my husband. So I think that'll hit harder, that routine of like, okay, how are you really going to set your day up and get back to running? But yeah, everyone's been very great with giving advice. I got to look at some return to run programs from other runners, and lots of advice. People brought food by. So all the things that, you get well taken care of in the first few weeks. And Josephine's just kind of sleeping and eating right now, and I know she'll get louder and wilder as she gets bigger and stronger. So I think I just really don't know much about being a mom yet, but it's been a pretty smooth start as far as there's a lot of things that could have gone wrong, or there's a lot of safety nets I could be missing, but I feel like I have them. So that's been really good.
You said your mom was there now helping, so that's
yes.
Nice.
Yeah, very nice. Very lucky to have that.
I remember all the food. It was so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have to say, I was impressed with Molly the whole pregnancy, though. Like, she rarely ever complained. Watching her post her workouts each week, just being consistent and handling her new body, like, I complained a lot more.
I was worried. Yeah, definitely. I was worried about how I would handle that, but it's a good time for me to be doing this. I think if I was trying to do this any earlier in my career, it would be a lot harder for me to wrap my head, just take a step back. But I just felt like I kind of welcomed it. I was just like, it's something I want to do, and whatever happens, happens. And running makes me feel normal, but if I can only do it for 10 minutes today, that's fine.
Well, and that's why they make jogging strollers too, eventually, because at least you can get out of the house and move if you don't have someone, if you're by yourself.
Yeah. Yep. And we have a treadmill too, so that should help.
Yeah. Then you won't feel trapped or anything like that. I was not a graceful pregnant woman.
I didn't run that much. I stopped after 4 or 5 months just because it didn't feel right. So I did a lot of walking, a lot more walking than running.
I think that's it, though. It can be just like we were talking about stories early on and how people handle things differently. Same thing with pregnancy and postpartum. Everyone's different. Everyone has a different journey. Totally. Our bodies all do things differently. So
totally. I feel like I was following a few other people on Instagram or blogs or whatever during this time. And there are definitely women who did a lot more than I did, and later too. And it's just, you don't know how your body's going to handle it. Depends on what you want to do, your health, the baby's health, how you're built. So I'm glad that I was willing to be really flexible, and I'm glad that my timeline wasn't rushed because of some of the changes with just how my sponsors view the comeback and it's not really a maternity leave, but it kind of is for professional runners. That's changed dramatically in the last 2 to 3 years because of Alicia Montano, basically, and Lindsay Krause. I send her thank you notes all the time. I'm just thank you for doing that. But it does take the pressure off. It does make you feel you want to come back, of course, but you're not going to have to lose your livelihood in the meantime while you're coming back. I feel like that's helped a lot too. And there's even more resources out there. USATF has grants, and there's I've been offered free pelvic floor therapy for after. So this stuff, amazing. 5 years ago, I don't think would have been there. So definitely The timing was good for me.
Yeah, no, that's great timing. None of that I think was available. 5 years ago. So it really, we've made a lot of changes in such a good direction. So
yeah, still need to make more, but yeah, definitely it's improved a lot.
Oh yeah. We just have to keep talking about it and normalizing it and realizing that this is just part of that spectrum that we go on as a female athlete. Yeah. It's just part of it. And like we said before, just like the puberty plateau or early on, it's the same thing. Just because you've had a baby doesn't mean you're going to be worse or better. You could go either way, but most women actually are stronger afterwards.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fear around that.
Mm-hmm. And then just realizing what the timeline is, it's not 3 months, it's not 6 months, it might be 2 years, but you will be back. It's just, it takes a little time.
Yeah.
And letting yourself really listen to your body and go to the timeline that your body says and not pushing it because you have to fulfill a contract is pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm. We were even talking with Carrie Tolson, the menopausal stuff too, and premenopausal stuff with women. And I think there's a lot more active women now that want to continue to train and be feeling good through that time. And there's not a lot of information on that as well. So all these hormonal changes are part of the picture, and understanding that. Roar was a great book too, in terms of addressing a lot of the hormonal stuff and how to fuel properly during those periods. But there aren't many books like that discuss those things about women and those changes in training and feeling your best during those changes in your life.
Definitely. I heard that podcast that you did, and it was really great to hear you guys talking about the menopause and the hormones. And that's stuff that we talk about all the time in our job, in our career. We're always trying to teach. So it's nice to hear it out there on podcasts, in the media, so that people can hear, hey, this is normal. We are normalizing the fact that women have hormones and that they change and they fluctuate every single day. And also they change at different parts of their life. So it's really interesting and important information. Well, you guys, we could probably talk for a really long time, but we should be winding down by now, because no doubt it's hot outside there, Sara and Molly. You probably want to get back to your little baby. So we just usually close this down with a couple questions, really easy questions. You can decide who goes first, and we can do every other one. There's 3 questions. The first is, what is the thing that you regularly do to take care of yourself?
Go for it, Sara.
Okay. I mean, running, I'm not a professional runner anymore, but I run almost every day. I think I take 1 to 2 days off a week, but that's like my mental clarity, and I feel better when I do it. And sometimes I have to force myself to do it, or force myself to find the time. And I tell this to my athletes that are graduating right now, because like most of them are going to go on to normal jobs and things. And I was like, just make it a part of your routine every day, 5 days a week. Be active. Your long-term health, mental health, and physical health, like, will thank you in like 20 years. And it's easy to like put that off on your day, because it's not something that you have to do anymore for sports or college, or like, but just making it a part of your life is really important. So I think practicing that now that I'm not a professional athlete is important. I think that's the biggest one.
I know I'm spoiled because I've been a professional athlete for so long, but I'm just like, for me, working out would be like saying I eat lunch or I go to bed at night. Like, it's not even a for me thing. It's just like essential to my life. So I guess I would say like a self-care type thing would just be something like forcing myself to have downtime of some kind. So whether it's like I go get my nails done, or I go shopping, like, or even just like sit there and do nothing, like just so my day's not like bam, bam, bam all day. Like, I feel like that's something I have to work on, and it's important to do for me. But I have the luxury of having a lot of time in my day sometimes. So I know not everyone can do that. Well, I used to. We'll see what happens now.
Yeah, probably not anymore, Molly. I hate to break it to you.
I know. I'm like, I can take on 1,000 projects, and now I'm going to be like, oh no.
They trick you in the beginning because they sleep so much, and then when they start waking up, that's when you're like, oh man, I've lost all my time.
Yeah, when she starts moving, I'm going to have to chase. So
that's right.
It fully supports the sitting and doing nothing. That does feel good sometimes. Our second question is, what is bringing you joy right now? I think I know Molly's, but
yes, staring at a baby it's bringing me joy, just because she's like such a mystery. Like, even like when I first saw her, I was like, who are you? Like, so that's been fun to just be like, oh, you're like this, and you do this, and you have this note. Like, that's been just fun to figure out. And then other than that, I get joy from the projects that I do. So like working on the Keeping Track podcast and our book has been like just really fulfilling, and I'm glad it works that I can pick it up and put it down. So I like collaborating on things like that too.
My kids bring me a lot of joy, both my athletes and my children. Watching them grow and succeed is really, really fulfilling, and helping them along the way. I'm also very, very excited. I love projects. So like the book was really fulfilling. I'm excited to have some downtime now that this next year, not coaching. So like we moved into a house like 2 years ago. So I've already have a list of things and projects that I haven't hung a picture on our wall. So oh, no. I am going to like be really excited to tackle some of those things that I haven't been able to have time for, or I just mentally can't do that when I have other things going on unless I can like fully finish something. So I'm excited to work on those things, but I like projects, and I like to take something and make it better. So that'll be fun.
Sounds like it. The last one is, what is the one thing that you love so much that you have to either be a part of or eat or do? It can be anything.
Just like running for me. I feel like it just always won. What even like in college, it'd be like, oh, this class is slipping, or oh, there's this and I'm just like, well, I just am going to do the running part first. I always have. I always wanted to. I always will. And then even when I retire, I know I'm going to be like, I need to still be a part of this. I need to still have a foot in it. It just is a pull that's there. So yeah, I definitely recognize that early.
I would definitely say running too. I mean, obviously, but it's different forms of my life. Like it's been like as an athlete, as a coach, writing about it now, or like being and mentoring kids. So probably running, but I also would have to say I have a huge sweet tooth. So I can't go with that. And that was the weirdest thing.
Peanut butter cups.
Yes, I always have peanut butter cups at my house. But that was the weirdest thing when I was pregnant is that I could not eat anything sweet. Like I told Molly this, as soon as I knew I was pregnant, because I would try to eat one and it would make me want to throw up. And I did not eat anything sweet the whole time I was pregnant.
Wow.
Besides orange sherbet. That was the only thing that tasted good. And then as soon as I had both my children, like the day after, like back to normal, like could eat sweet things. So I was like, this is so strange and weird, but okay.
Well, now I have to ask Molly. Sorry, I swear we're ending here. But what was there anything that like that happened to you?
I didn't have anything extreme for like, oh, I can't eat that anymore, but I just felt a little sickly in the beginning. So I would tend to eat the same thing every day. Like I ate a lot of bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches. That's just what was good. Like usually I like to eat salmon. That was gross to me. So yeah, she's made mostly of like bacon and eggs.
Awesome. Well, on that note, I'm so glad you guys decided to join us today. I really love the book. I'm glad you put it into the world. I think it's going to help so many people. This is a great conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, we really enjoyed talking with you guys, and hopefully we can meet in person. And good luck with your practice. I know you guys are in Atlanta.
Yeah, so we work with the Atlanta Track Elites with Amy. So we've created this injury board this year and kind of group. So we're working with the performance director, the athletic trainers, the PTs, and medical directors and coaches. We all work together.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's really fun. We have like a weekly call and we're really doing a lot of education. We're talking about like simple things, a lot of the things that you have in your experts section actually, how do we make sure that we're getting enough sleep? What does energy availability look like? Using meditation and mindfulness and not having negative self-talk and doing all of those things with the athletes and with the team. So we're trying to kind of change the way athletes think and are brought up, if you will.
That's amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I hope we do get to meet you guys or work together in some way, shape, or form. We've got a really cool thing that I'm putting together that I may ask you guys to check out eventually.
Yeah,
let us know.
Yeah, I certainly will. Well, thanks guys so much. We'll talk with you soon. If you ever need anything.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was nice meeting you, Kate and Kacy.
Yeah, bye Kacy, bye Kate.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that it resonated with you and that you learned something. If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps increase our visibility within the platform so that more awesome people like you can find us.
If you'd like to support us further, pretty please, you can visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/morethanmiles. That's www.patreon.com/morethanmiles. Or for a few dollars, you can help the show grow and keep going, as well as receive exclusive perks like monthly Q&As with us. Until next time, remember to run the mile you're in, and that training is so much more than miles.